that would work for us. And I would start. We always start by being silent for a couple of minutes and letting anybody speak that has an urgent issue. This is much more of a closed session than we normally have, so we're all friends in real life. But if anybody does have anything they'd like to say to start out, please do so. Hearing nothing, I'm going to turn it over to Brian to open it, because this was Sir Dragon Z's topic in the first place. So, Diamata, you're broadcasting right now. I'm not sure if you know that, but you would have to mute yourself to stop that process. Sir Dragon Z, Brian, would you like to provide any opening comments?
Thank you, Dr. Bob. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody tonight. I hope you can see me. Great. Yeah, it was just off the top of my head that I, suggested the topic in general, realizing that myself in the last few relationships that I've had, that I've had some difficulties, and thinking that I was very clear with my protocols and with my expectations of what it was I was looking for, what it was I was hoping for, that I think I may have laid a little bit too much laurels on the initial conversation and never did enough follow-up during the relationships to realize that, I needed to manage it a lot more. And the last few years have really taught me that that's what I need to do, is that just because we set the bar at a certain standard at the very beginning, that we still need to revisit it and to continue on to see where we're at.
What would trigger you, what would trigger the realization that you have strayed from your initial understanding of the agreements?
Well, personally, I guess that would be when, you start to see things not going into the flow where you thought they were going to go. I don't want to get into personal aspects too much, but for example, one partner years ago there, I had hoped that I was helping her find work, and every time a job had come up, it failed, and I kept helping and helping and helping her to try and find work, and I'm just like, something's not right here. Like, I'm helping her in all these ways to help her find work. She doesn't want to work. And work to me is a huge deal breaker with I'm going to have a relationship with someone, because, I'm not able to be the breadwinner, so to speak, totally, and I'm looking for someone else to also be to help out with the relationship and whatnot too. So that was a difficult time for me in that one there, and that was the start of it. And then it's just, when you start to see that things aren't flowing as smoothly as they once were, and again, this is where changes happen in our lifestyles. For myself, the past 5 years, I haven't been on a steady work schedule, hardly at all, especially due to an injury the last 3 years now. So it's really thrown me off. And by throwing me off, I'm not in my happy place. If I'm not in my happy place, I can't work with someone then and have a great relationship with someone then, because I'm out of whack a little bit. So I've had to pull myself back and realign my values in a sense of getting myself organized here so that I can be a better person to give it to others.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that or add their own perspectives?
Hello, it's Ursula. Hi. I think that's, yes, and that's Nikita. Our computer's a little screwed up right now, but anyway, I think that's something that we don't have as much issue with because we're a little bit later in our relationship, the two of us. But our relationship is always evolving. Like it's always changing, and it always requires pretty much constant maintenance and constant follow-up, and fairly regular talks. Like for us, it's a big deal to avoid relationship dissatisfaction by communicating a lot. And one of my requirements is that I'm required to tell mistress when anything is wrong. Doesn't really matter what, if it's physically, mentally, if it's something that I think has happened or that I think she's done, I need to talk about it, and we need to work through it, because a lot of the time it's so much my own perception. But if I try to hold that in and just ignore it, it never goes away. You know, it's like those, any kinds of bad feelings, they never really go away. And if I can clear them up right away, it really helps to avoid any bigger issues later on.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Of course.
Okay, so then Nikita, how do you ever sense that Ursula probably should be talking to you and hasn't?
Absolutely.
So what are your indicators?
Having known her for 23 years,
Okay.
there's absolutely, but
let's get something that's generalizable.
so there are body language tells that are very recognizable if you understand body language or if you understand the person you're with very well.
I don't have a good poker face.
You know, there's also pauses in times when I ask her something that may not be related to what is a problem, but if there's a hesitation that in no way can be related to what I'm talking about, just that sign of a hesitation is a signal that there is something that needs to be discussed.
Do you have any strategy? I'm obviously taking notes, which is all of you are used to that.
Of course.
Is there a strategy? So let's say you get a pause. So Ursula's paused, and you say, "Hey, what's up?" And you get the standard response of, "Oh, nothing." Now what?
I'll literally just repeat it, and effectively just tell her to tell me what's going on. We're at a stage where she understands that she must be transparent, and she must provide me anything I ask for. So she's given that. Basically, she can have the hesitation, she can do the nothing once, but she never does it beyond that.
I am allowed to think about it first.
Of course.
Like if I do the hesitation and it's maybe because I haven't formed the thought clearly in my head, I am allowed to think about it and try and put whatever it is that I'm feeling into words, right? Because that can be very important. I'm a very emotional person, so I tend to feel before I think, and unfortunately that doesn't translate well into talking about it. It really doesn't. So a lot of the time I have to actually think about what I'm feeling and to formulate it properly into words that we can talk about. But I can't just leave it alone. We always have to come back to it. So once I feel I've had enough time to think about it, we have to come back to it.
Okay.
And
I'd like to welcome Brett also, and Brett's very sophisticated in these areas. He's a friend of ours from Austin, and he's a part of J-Lou, Jack, and Miriam's house up in Dallas. So welcome, Brett. And Brett's a daddy, by the way.
Do you want to talk about your...
Anybody want to respond to that? Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll talk at all about. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'll take a stab at it. Hi. So I wanted to address two things. What Ursula and Nikita were talking about. We have what we call safety protocols, and it's nothing really defined like in a manual. It's more about we have Angie notices maybe that's something that I need to talk about. She's got a way of approaching me. And with my Asperger's, Bob, you probably well know, sometimes when that laser focus is on something, you're barely aware of the time of day. So Angie's got ways of basically raising flags. And likewise, and something that they mentioned, I too have to give Angie some time to think. And oftentimes she'll say, you know, I need to get my thoughts together, I need to get my words together, and she's very explicit, but we've worked out the trust that we will come back to that. And that was very important, because early on, we might not trust each other to come back to a discussion or to come back to an issue. So now when we say, hey, you know, I'm going to come back at the end of the day, or I'm going to come back in a couple of hours, we make sure to stick to it. It's an agreement, and we keep that agreement. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what technique do you permit Angie to use to interrupt you to get you refocused?
She will put herself in my line of sight and stand, or if it's a point where, and this is her learning my behaviors, she has a good sense for when she can talk to me, and she will ask me, is this a good time? Usually a lack of response or a no, and she'll go away. But she knows that she's planted that seed in my head. And so even though I might be focused, I know, okay, I got to come back to this later.
That's great. I understand all that.
Something I wanted to say to Brian, you mentioned the work thing. No matter what this is we do, it's still a relationship. And I firmly believe that within that relationship, you need to have compatible goals in life, compatible outlooks in life, and compatible morals and ethics. And sometimes you're not going to discover that for a couple of years. So I view that process of what you went through not necessarily as a failure, but as what normally happens. You know, you come into a relationship, you got the new relationship energy, and everything's wonderful, and nobody can make any mistakes. And then after about 2-3 years, you start picking up on the habits. You start picking up on, are you both really in line and able to get into alignment? And sometimes you got to go through that same process after a huge change, just say after an illness or something has happened. You may find yourself going through that again.
Thank you, sir. Reminding me of that is making me remember now how the process happened a little bit. And as my relationships the last few years have been growing, I've been adding and layering them in the sense of I have to make sure I talk about this. I have to make sure I talk about this so that I get things all down. And that one relationship, for example, I was living out of town at the time when we had started things. And then a year later, we were in town, the same town. Then we both lost our jobs at the same time that she moved in with me. So it was like a layer of bad news on bad news on bad news that really challenged our relationship, and it challenged me to work on things. But at the end of the day, it was still very difficult because our values were different and they just weren't aligned. So sadly, that relationship had to pass its way and move on, and it did. But I've learned from that, and that's what I think I should be doing as a dominant person here, that I should be learning from all my errors and mistakes and moving forward is how can I try not to have this happen again. And in one of my most recent relationships with Dia Media here is with Anka, is that one of the things that really worked well with us is that she would always express to me, I feel. And when she said to me, I feel, it really helped me. It took me a while to understand this because she worked on me here to get me to understand it. She didn't need fixing. She just needed me to listen and to, repeat, basically speaking, repeat what she had said, that I'd heard it and accept it, and that's it. And And it took a while for us to learn that. But she taught me that. That was her language. My language is very direct. It is very straight up, very direct. And so that can be difficult for others, and sometimes it makes them shut down. And that's where, again, I try and work at, I'm an open book. You can talk to me at any time. I'm always available here. Only thing I ask for is respect. As long as it's said in a respectful way, I will always listen and I'll always be patient. When it's not done respectfully, then we have a problem.
I'd like to dovetail a little bit off of what Sir Dragon's talking about and what Michael mentioned, and talking about having common ethics and goals and so forth. And when we're talking about relationship dissatisfaction, and if you did have common ethics and needs, sometimes it's a change of the relationship instead of a change of the person. So if you find something that is causing a dissatisfaction in the relationship, that gives you the opportunity to change whatever it is that's upsetting you or upsetting the relationship. Comments on that?
So did I catch that as you're talking about a change in the relationship versus a change in the person, or the other way around?
A change in the relationship versus a change in the person. Because you have a relationship dissatisfaction does not mean the relationship's over. It just gives you an opportunity to change your relationship so that dissatisfaction isn't there. What we did in our relationship, as we were learning each other and having upsets, I would say, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And you were very fearful that meant that the relationship was over.
Well, that's how I always heard it.
But what it really meant was, we're not doing this thing that's causing this upset anymore. We're going to fix this.
Well,
it's not happening again.
Well, and it took us 5 or 6 cycles for me even to understand that that's what we meant.
I know. Yeah, but
Okay,
pointing out.
got it. Okay.
I think I can speak a little bit to that. We didn't necessarily change the structure of our relationship, but I think we came to understandings of our truer natures. I thought I was poly, and there's a funny story about that, because when Angie and I first met, she told me right off the bat, "Oh, I'm not poly," and I said, "Well, I am," and about 5 years in, yeah, I learned that, nope, I'm not poly. So, and funny enough, it turned from a dissatisfaction to a great relief that I didn't feel a pressure either on myself or to have to figure this thing out. It didn't need to be figured out. So, it doesn't always end up being the end of the relationship. It can be a great source of relief to get rid of it.
One of the areas that I encountered previously in the area of relationship dissatisfaction had to do with the hopes I had about the other person. And as time went on and the person didn't develop as I had certainly expected or intended, I became increasingly distraught, hostile.
This is Andy. I agree with that. Those comments. Sue and I were together for. Oh, are you guys picking me up?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sue and I, for most people, most of you know that Sue and I we've been together for 10 years now, but for the first 6.5 years of that, I actually served Sue. And going through that cycle, we had a lot of relationship dissatisfaction. We butted at our heads and just about ended our relationship many times in that first 6.5 years. And then we just kept coming back at it because our value systems are and what we wanted were so much together the same. And really, 6.5 years ago, we were ready to completely end the relationship and go our own ways or 3.5 years ago, and it ended up being an experimentation in flipping the relationship for a weekend that caused us to realize that we actually had the relationship backwards. And so you talk about changing the relationship, that's a major change in a relationship that most people wouldn't even attempt.
Right.
But, so yeah, you do have to really look at your relationship and what you want from it, and whether the person you're with is somebody that is worth that work to go through. And we did many times go through different work to try to figure out how to move forward in our relationship. And yeah.
Thank you. Brett, do you happen to have any comments on relationship dissatisfaction?
Bob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wow, I do. And this topic is always a reminder to me of the huge investment that goes into an MS dynamic, that we will weather these storms, that we will turn the prow of the boat into the big wave and just ride it out. So being around people like those on this meeting is always an inspiration to me, and a reminder that the secret ingredient is time and determination and work. So, well, 3, I guess it's a blend. So anyway, yeah, we've gone through quite a few things, and I've been with my girl for 2 years, and it's amazing to look back at how much we've both grown in that time. And since I'm in charge and everything ultimately rolls up to me, that can be really painful for me. I don't get to be immune as a source of dissatisfaction. My expectations have frequently been completely off. I recently went back and started seeing a therapist recently just to look at some of my personal emotional patterns that I've, started in childhood. And it's opened my eyes. I think, my God, why didn't I do this earlier in the relationship? So I'm still uncovering patterns that add more noise to the signal in our communication. Anti-patterns, they would be called, like in the software world. So certainly, I think I thought, and I'm sorry for going on for so long, I think I put too much faith in a contract up front, writing out my expectations. That is just not, or I learned from me, it just was not a substitute for the experiential process of two people vesting their hopes in one another and moving forward together. All the clarity in the world, I thought I was being an extremely responsible dom and master by just thoroughly documenting everything. But that really has not held a candle to the hard conversations and just, gut-wrenching conversations when something has gone awry. Or, frequently for me, it was holding on to dissatisfaction and being too self-sacrificing. But I'm careful of that language now because I don't want to make myself some sort of martyr figure and put her into some sort of aggressor or hostile type role. No, it was just me being dishonest or unwilling to look at what I was willing to accept and unwilling to really count the costs. And also, I wasn't considering the cost of the role that I was placing her in when I decided to just bear the brunt of some dissatisfaction. I know I'm being really vague here, but I just don't want to get into detailed stories and take up everyone's time. but my ability to handle dissatisfaction and problems constructively is just growing all the time. And it's exciting in a way because we're still here. And it gives me so much hope to think about where we'll be in 5 years. I feel some sadness for not having had more of these skills sooner. So that's probably a good spot to conclude my comment, Bob, so I don't go on for twice that length.
Well, you have a way of saying things in a way that gets through to me, which is why in the book that I'm now at 70,000 words, I found out tonight, on the Advanced MS book, you're quoted 4 or 5 times. Can you go back just for a second, Brett, and talk to me a little bit more about the cost of holding on to a position through an upset?
Oh, God, I forgot how fast you write, Bob. Well, sure. We all know that that frequently the fight is about how we reacted. It becomes very quickly a fight about how we just treated each other instead of a fight about the issue. You know, if I feel as though I've been disrespected, or if I fall into an old pattern of reaction and we start tripping one another's emotional triggers, then we're just going to go down that rabbit hole for an hour before someone gets hurt so badly that the other person feels bad and apologizes, and then we can kind of get back to the original issue. And it is so hard not to do that. It's one of those times of life where you feel almost Christ-like when you pull it off, you know, not being provoked. And it, anyway, but the cost of hanging on to dissatisfaction for me is resentment, and I'm speaking only for me and my experience. You know, in the daddy role, you're indulgent and giving, and you can go too far with that and put yourself in this archetype of the giver, which kind of implies that she's the archetype of the taker, which is not really true. But you've set up this frame for all future discourse, and if your resentment grows because you're tolerating more and more of something you didn't really sign up for, or something that you didn't really negotiate very well or think through, it's so easy to continue projecting that role onto her, and not sit down and talk like adults and give her the respect her intelligence deserves. And it's just so funny what internal resistances there are to actually reassessing a situation. I mean, I was driving home today and thinking, God, maybe I do need to get a tattoo, and it should be somewhere in view of myself, and it should have the 2 great questions of Taoism, you know, where are you and what time is it? And the answers to those questions are, you're here, and the time is now, i.e., do not be affected by the past. It means to me, I shouldn't let myself blame my partner for hurts incurred from my past decisions, which is just so easy to do. It's so hard to shake that. So this cost just mounts. It's like it's, you know, gathering interest all the time, Bob. And it's so devilishly hard to let go of my resentment over the outcome of my bad decisions. So I'm just really conscious of that these days, and it's a reason that I joined this webinar to hear other people's thoughts, because it's not like all dissatisfaction has to be confronted in the moment. No, I'm dealing with old dissatisfaction right now and not letting it spoil this moment. This moment's fine. We have lots of great stuff going on, but it's just so easy to get trapped in the past and continue to live out old hurt. And, you know, there's just so many roads back there in your mind. And you know, it's just so important to me. Tomorrow, the next day, as soon as I'm around my girl again, to just stay focused on the moment, you know, that we're here, it's now, and I'm going to make the best choice I can right now, unburdened by past dissatisfactions. So again, I think that's a pretty good stopping point.
Good. Thank you. Let me just sit down for 30 seconds or so. That I'm just in this section in the book, and one of the topics that I've written about is, or that we've written about, is punishing your current partner for experiences with past partners. So that can be an issue of lack of trust in current partner as a result of lack of trust in prior partners, or it can be treating a current partner as if they were exhibiting patterns of a prior partner.
You also have the promising not to know your partner. So
why don't you do that one?
In one of the therapy sessions Bob and I had, the person who was facilitating this said, you need to promise not to know each other. And she went on to explain that that means just because they acted and responded this way in the past, don't pigeonhole them into that response now. Give them the opportunity to grow, so you promise not to know them.
Floor is open.
Well, first of all, Bob, this is Brett again. As to what you said a moment ago, punishing your current partner for things that previous partners have done in the past, man, guilty as charged. That's it's really great for me to hear that right now and have another couple reinforcing that.
Thank you.
I was going to respond.
I guess it's safe to talk.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You can go ahead.
I was going to respond to something Master Brett brought up about contracts and how in the early stages of our MS relationship, we didn't have a defined contract as far as everything laid out proper, and we had, you know, certain protocols, of course, and things like that, but we were more interested in working on ourselves and as a couple with our new dynamic. And that was really important for me because I found a lot of extra, a lot of emotional outbursts, which I'm sure Slave Sue would sympathize with, that I wasn't experiencing before as a slave, and I didn't know where they were coming from. So for me to be able to work through those and work on them together with Mistress was really important. And as the years have gone by, we've added more and more, I guess what you could say is a contract, but
more and more protocols.
More and more
there
protocols.
There is no written contract,
Yeah.
you're mine.
Yeah.
There are no limits, you're mine, it's done.
Exactly, yeah, so that's our contract, really.
I mean, it's interesting because I have one other girl who's primarily a long-distance relationship. She's in Belgium, so 5,000 miles away. We've seen her 3 times in person. Most recently, actually, she just flew home today. But I've known her for quite some number of years. And again, the first time she came out here, we had known each other for about 3 years then. We brought her out here for her first major kink event. And that was where I actually formally collared her. But that led itself to an entire different series of issues within relationship dissatisfaction, because we're dealing with primarily communication via a text medium with Skype, whether voice or video, as often as we can. And she was finding very recently, actually before Christmas, that we had a long break where we weren't able to do as much voice or Skype communication, and she found that to create a massive issue of questioning the relationship and questioning her role in the relationship and whether or not it was going to be able to serve her needs. So I don't know if anybody else here has dealt with long-distance MS relationships that have large gaps of time in between when you can actually reaffirm physically your relationship. For us, the moment we were able to get back to normal communicating with voice, of course, just the ability to have that tone of voice as opposed to the tone of text, which is very hard to read, made all the difference for her. You know, but I'm curious to know if anybody else has had experiences with that, because I've only had her caller for a little more than a year now. So again, it's a relationship that's been ongoing for about 4 years, but as far as the MS aspect, it's been a year, and it's definitely one of ongoing development. So if anybody else has any other experience in that nature.
Anybody else have experience in long-distance relationships? The only couple the couple that I would refer you to is Master Griffin and Slave Ann, because Slave Good Pet Ann, because he got an assignment that was hundreds of miles away, and they're a very rigid, by-the-book couple. Do you know them at all, or do you want an introduction?
I would love an introduction. I think that would be fantastic.
Okay, because he developed some really pragmatic methods. In the morning, he would give her an assignment. In the afternoon, he would get a briefing on the assignment. He specifically had her make many of the arrangements he would normally, as a dominant man, have made himself. And he would have made them if they'd been living together, and they lived together. They're an established couple. It's Castle Griffin.
Yeah, we know that part.
Okay, well, that's who I'm talking about.
But please, an introduction would be great.
Well, they also found that even playing internet games. So at night, at a certain time, they would get on a certain game at 2 different places, and having that shared experience was vital.
Yeah, we're both regular users of the virtual world Second Life. In fact, she earns her living building training simulations within there. So most mornings we're on there together, but because, of course, we're dealing with 5,000 miles, so we're talking about an 8-hour time difference as well.
Yes.
So I'm on there with her at 4:30 in the morning my time. So she gets me when I'm really tired, which isn't necessarily the best. So we're trying to create a time, a more regular time where I can at least voice Skype with her, even if I'm at work, you know, for half an hour when I'm actually awake. But I do like the idea of a daily assignment. I did, at the end of this trip, give her a requirement of a weekly journal entry, and I've had her create a blog for me so that she'll enter at least weekly an entry about her life experiences, exploring her other aspects of her kink life and being in a lifestyle in Belgium, because she's in other relationships there that are new. So you know, I want basically to keep an eye on how she's developing and what's going on with that.
I have a question for you. I only once, very early with Slave Mindy, tried a journal, and it was an abysmal failure. Two reasons. In the first place, what I was getting from the journal was a litany of what she did, which wasn't of any interest to me whatsoever. And she is such a painfully, she's an RN paralegal, so for her to sit down and write something is an ordeal because of the depth of the precision. And so it would take her an hour to generate a page, and then the page was nothing I was interested in. So we had a lot of problems along that line. I wondered if you put any boundaries around what you mean when you say you want her to do a journal.
I did, and in part because I had recently read your book, since we received all three of them, and I went, oh, that's right, he had issues with journaling and Mindy, okay, well, let's make sure that I'm more specific. And I was fairly specific in requiring that I wanted things that were specific to her experience of her journey within this lifestyle. She's a very emotional person. She's not going to have any issues with putting her emotionality into it. I have the benefit that that's the way she already is. And I didn't want a daily because that would be too onerous. So
I'm terrible at keeping a journal.
Oh,
Absolutely horrible.
I would not ask this of Ursula.
But I do like to journal impressions about certain things, especially after events, because I think pretty much every single event that we've ever gone to, I've experienced something really profound and really life-changing. Every single one. And that's saying a lot. But I also tend to be quite open to those kinds of things as well, and I think that helps. I think that facilitates change. So I tend to like to write those things down briefly as a quick sort of thing, and then Miss can go over them as she likes because I don't have anything private from her, but I also tend to star certain areas on things I'd like to go into more, so it's a reminder for me more than anything else. It's kind of like a shopping list. Let's look this up, let's look at this a little more, right? It's quick impressions.
Okay, thank you. Master reminded me that Master Michael had wanted to say something.
Oh, thank you. It's such a good topic about the extended and long distance relationship. I didn't want to derail that, but I wanted to go back to something that you had said, Bob, and that Brett had brought up, and that was, Bob, you had expressed that to your expectations and hopes that you would eventually become hostile because they weren't getting fulfilled. And Brett was speaking about holding on, and I think that. So when Angie came down with lupus, I had to let go of some certain expectations, and I found that the thing that I did maybe has some application. I don't know. I'll offer it out there, but it goes back to going back to the basics, going back to the roots of what are your values, what are your ethics, what is it that you really want out of your life, who are you on the inside. By coming to that, then you understand where are these expectations and hopes coming from. These things that you're holding on to, where are they coming from? And then there's a series of questions that I ask, and I ask this of things for protocols, I ask this of things that I want. Is it realistic? Is it sustainable? And is it in the best interest of all involved? So for an expectation that I might have, is it realistic and sustainable? I always use the example of getting my coffee served to me at 6 a.m. Well, it's not realistic and sustainable anymore simply because of the fatigue of lupus. So what was it that I really wanted? Well, I really wanted the ability to have my coffee made for me, whether all I have to do is push a button or it's actually brought to me. I wanted that action of Angie going and doing something for me to make it easier. I may not be able to get everything that I want, but I do get the service, and I do get the ability to just push a button rather than having to put everything together. And that is realistic and sustainable. And it's in the best interest of everyone, because if she doesn't make me coffee, people die.
I agree.
Right. Another thing I wanted to throw in there, just as a random comment, is something that I've been thinking about lately, is that these relationships are continuous improvement. Whether we're continuously improving ourselves, improving each other, I think that that's what helps sustain us through the long term, is that we're not looking to be held into a rigid, strict contract like the myth is, that, you know, once you set it in stone, it's like, you know, the 10 Commandments on a tablet. But I think that the positive MS relationships that I've seen are all about what are we doing, where are we going, how are we growing, and how are we getting better, both between each other and within ourselves.
Well, I've said this before. It came from, which movie? It came from a movie that we saw at Christmas time, where, was it the touring movie? The person you expect the least from is...
It's about Alan Turing and the Enigma machine.
So, my
he was an aspie. Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the...
No, I haven't, but yes, he probably was classic Asperger's. Wonderful man, too.
Great movie.
So they had this quote, and they said it about 3 times. And the first time that I heard the quote, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And the second time I heard it, I had a different feel for it. And by the time they said it the last time, which these are 3 or 4 times, I'm writing this down now, and I'm saying, I get why you have dissatisfaction in a MS relationship. And it may be relationships in general, but mostly in an MS relationship. And it's because at the beginning of the relationship, your expectations are different. The person doesn't know how to serve you. So each time they serve you, you're thrilled that they've done it and that they've done it well and that they've learned something new. And eventually they learn this. And so that thrill isn't as sweet because now it's almost expected. And what you said, Master Michael, is that made me think of this, is that you need to keep that learning, that excitement, that growing as a focus of the relationship, so that each time your coffee is brought to you, it is a thrilling experience, and it's not just an expectation that slave is doing what slave is supposed to be doing. Slave is giving you a gift of their service, and it's master being mindful of that gift each time.
So now give the quote.
I don't remember the quote. It's the people who you least expect.
The person who produces the most is the person of whom you expected the least.
Yeah, it's like that.
Essentially, that.
I just would like to offer one more thing that that's also true for the slave, to be mindful and in the moment to find the new thrill and the new ability to find more out of her service. Angie calls it patching up the slave 2.0. You know, finding those new ways and those new paths and new growth in some of the simplest things that you've been doing all the time.
He's writing, just a second.
I had something to give. Oh yeah, concerning when you start running into a problem with your slave. What I've been writing about is that there are 4 decisions. That you have a decision tree that has 4 branches. So you either have a skills failure, a knowledge failure, a training failure that's master's responsibility, or a capacity failure.
Where's willingness?
Oh, okay. Well, willingness. Okay, that's fine. Capacity failure, or your willfulness. So you have to sort out between whether you've got a skill, whether you have a skill issue, a knowledge issue, a training issue, a capacity issue, or willfulness. So those are your options. And in my experience, if you come upon a capacity failure that's a surprise, that's where you got me. That's where you hit I've hit a wall. So if I had expected that you should be able to understand this. I've made sure you didn't have a skills failure. I've trained you. I've tried training you in this point any number of different ways because I'm sensitive to your learning styles and my teaching styles. I've then come up against the issue of whether this is willfulness or you simply aren't smart enough to do it. I'll stop the conversation here, but this is the analytic path I go down when I was confronting issues with my former select. Well, yes, when I'm up, if it would trigger an upset, that's what I was falling back on for analysis.
That sort of stopped the room.
Well, I want to be quiet. We have a cadre of people here that would pack any room at a conference. So I want to just be quiet and listen.
I'm not sure if you're making a statement there or asking a question.
I was observing that you have really 5 choices.
Because I think Jen and I are reading the same book right now.
Yes.
And that's exactly the part that I just went through. You've also got to consider health issues, right?
Yep.
As being another thing, right?
That's capacity.
Yeah, capacity,
That
yeah.
falls under physical capacity.
Physical capacity, yeah,
Or
that's true.
ability, so.
Yeah.
How did you know I had that book right here?
Yes, she literally does.
Oh, we did actually see the cover before you unmuted.
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
recognized it in the distance, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that was the part that I just finished reading about too, which was really interesting.
But it's so funny, you know. I don't get aggressive and territorialized in the master-slave community, with one exception. I don't want anybody else to be more of a Raven Caldera fan than I am.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
You might have a problem here.
Bob, you got a battle.
Yeah,
You've got a few battles.
got a serious battle right here.
Because we just introduced my other girl to Raven Caldera, and
we're pagan too.
and
We
we're
have been for
pagan.
years, so.
Oh, and I'm trans, so you know there's this whole
Big battle.
connection there happening.
Right. Well, Cy, I guess I'll have to move over.
Sure.
I'll share. Okay.
You can have 51%.
Okay, yeah. As long as I got my 51%, we're doing great.
This is Brett. I have a comment about the long-distance relationship and building satisfaction into that. There are a lot of productivity and collaboration tools available for different devices now, and many of them work very well with MS. You can start a conversation on this topic in any room with a few MS couples, but I like one called Wunderlist or Wunderlist. That's a particularly good one. Of course, there's some elegance to Griffin giving Anne, Slave Good Pet, 1 task per day. I kind of like that. But for the rest of us who kind of have our phone in our hand all the time, Wunderlist is pretty good. Raven and Joshua use one called Workflowy that I use to collaborate with my secretary at work. And currently the one I'm using with my girl is called Chore Monster, and it is a chore task list for children. But yeah, Chore Monster. And I don't want to go into all the ins and outs of Chore Monster, but you earn rewards with points, and you spin a wheel and win monsters and stuff like that. It's very amusing. And while normally I would be leery of rewarding somebody with like material things for serving me. It doesn't have to be material things. It can be any sort of thing that you enjoyed together. But anyway, I've had a lot of success with Wunderlist because it'll send you an email as well as check it off in your app. The app is very slick, but getting the email of my girl putting her shopping list together and then checking off the items as she stops shopping is kind of like getting to experience that with her real time. And seeing that she has checked off the daily recurring tasks I have for her throughout the day is a little reinforcer to me that I am being served. She only lives 3 hours away, so we see each other every weekend. But these things provide a little bit of daily connection and a reminder that service is occurring or obedience is occurring, which increases my satisfaction. It makes me know that she's thinking of me.
Very good. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thank you for the app suggestions. I'll definitely take a look at those. Yeah, I think I'll definitely have to look at the chore monster one. I like the point system. So, you know, it sounds like you could be very creative with that.
I'll give you an interesting, completely off the top, completely unrelated fact. Sociological studies concerning motivators for students to get grades in secondary schools all clearly show that monetary rewards can't be beat by can't be topped by any other form of encouragement. In other words, if you pay the parents that pay their kids for grades get kids that get better grades. Period. End of argument.
But then you have brilliant children like mine who say, well, I don't need the money, so I'm not going to work.
It presumes that the child is motivated for money. That's right.
I'd like to add one more tool that Angie and I use because it integrates nicely with Google Calendars, and that's called Cozy, C-O-Z-I. It's much like what everyone else has talked about. It's basically a list maintenance tool. It's got nice app, and it works on the basis of a family. So you can have multiple people assigned, you can create multiple lists, and just do all the things that people who are driven by lists like to do with organizations. But I like the Wunderlist, and I actually may use the Chore Monster for other purposes, so thank you.
Yeah, this is Andy. We also use Cozy, and there's a couple, we also like the calendaring feature, and there's actually a journaling feature in it as well that you can do with family as well. So, yeah, Cozy's.
You'll drive me back to looking these up. Brett, I'd heard Brett mention these at a MASS meeting a couple of years ago, and about a year and a half, I guess, and I went home and ran through all of them, and I thought I could accomplish all of those using the Word outline, his outline program, and I've been using that ever since he mentioned it in the first place. But I'll go back and revisit these now that you're saying it, Brett's saying it differently, and I'm hearing other people liking them.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. Do we have any last comments?
I actually do, if you don't mind. One of the blurbs that you put up, Bob, is "Slave is smarter than master." And this brings to mind because we had a chance to see Cozen, formerly known as Master Steve Sampson, at Southwest Leather Conference. And it's funny you mention that because one of the quotes that he said back in, I think it was 2001, that made such an impression on me as a young little kinkling. He was talking, he was giving a class on MS, and he made the statement that I found so profound that this big man who's, you know, a master is saying. He said, every single slave that I have has been smarter more capable, probably can run circles around me with the types of degrees that they have and the abilities that they have. But it's the one thing that they lack, that hole in their heart that only service to me as the master will fill, and that's why they're with me. So I just wanted to offer that. And I've been joined by Slavanti.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry.
He's ready to go.
Did you know that he's a PhD psychologist?
It does not surprise me with how I hear how he got everybody to do the things that he wanted.
He's one of these people who had written a book. I'd asked him many years ago, why in the world haven't you written a book in this field? And he said, I'd written it, and my hard drive crashed, and I've never recovered from it. So I can't hear you right now.
Oh, that's okay. We weren't saying anything, but I just, those words that he mentioned, I found basically to be true. You know, I have no doubt in my heart that this woman here could, you know, perfectly well take care of herself and everything around, but it's through her service to me that she finds that personal satisfaction. Is she smarter than me? In a lot of ways, yeah. And that's not the point, though. I never felt like I had to be the $6 million man, stronger, faster, better. I've just got to be me, because it's me that she's serving.
We have a saying, a quote that we provide not only in the books but also when we're presenting quite a bit, which is an observation. It's a quote from the world of business, which is that A leaders select A people they surround themselves with A level people because they rely on the other people's brilliance to feed their brilliance, whereas B level people select C and D level people to be around them because they can't risk being revealed as a B level leader.
There's a slightly different one that I've had mention of in where I work with conversations I've had with another very intelligent person there, and that you never want to hire somebody dumber than you are, because they won't help get the job done.
Right.
I know very well that Mistress is intellectually smarter than me, but I have to be at least halfway intelligent to be able to hold up my end of the conversation, so I'm her emotional lubricant.
It's true, actually.
It's true.
I brought this up after this last Lupercalia, and you know, I don't have Asperger's. I'm just one of these people. But
you don't know.
No, I don't. I don't have it. I'm just one of these people who I've always had a level of intellect that causes social
interactions.
With social issues with interaction. So I tend not to be as good at socializing as Ursula is. So she's my lubricant when we go to kink conferences to ease our way into conversations or to ease our way into knowing other people and meeting them. So it's
with some quite lovely rewards.
Well, there's some people that are just so smart that you don't have a chance of being smarter than they are. And I certainly recognize that.
The room is filled with these people.
Yeah, I worked for somebody who was lamenting the other day that she simply has nobody that she knows that's smart enough in the particular field we work in to help her to do any strategic planning for the company. And boy, I can certainly appreciate that. It's a problem. Anybody else?
I just to say thank you to everybody. It's been a really interesting discussion. It's been just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, likewise. I really appreciate everybody coming together at the last minute. Frankly, it makes me wonder whether we want to change the nature of these of our webinars so that we just those of us that know one another and sort of common background get together and talk every so often. This was fabulous.
Well, you know, Bob, nothing's stopping you from organizing those kinds of talks. I find them wonderful to have, to sit down with people. I mean, it was, you know, Master Skip and Master Jim always talk about having those kinds of support groups. You've got a perfect mechanism here.
Okay, well, we can certainly invite them. I've spoken to Master Jim about being on the webinar a number of times, and he's always, it seems to me he's been intrigued with the idea. He's always been supportive. He's always really said, let me think about it a little bit. I certainly know Master Skip well enough to invite him on.
He's not being specific.
Oh, you're not being specific, being general. Sorry, got it.
Yeah, I meant that you could put together this kind of thing as a support group for us. You said you liked pulling us together. You could do this on a regular basis to have us come together to have these sort of roundtable discussions, okay, similar to what Master Jim and Master Skip have suggested.
I'm going to throw in my dollars worth in agreeing with Michael there, and that we would love that. The region we live in is lacking a lot of spiritual leather type MS people that have gatherings. There are some around, but it's hard to get any of them together to have conversations, especially in, as you say, a support style, so that we can discuss the issues of these relationships and discuss the solutions that each person has found. So I would love that. I mean, I think it would be fantastic.
Great. And Ava said that she'll facilitate that for us. She'll help us with that on creative sexuality. Yay.
Well, let me start working with everybody that's been in the room tonight and talk about a little bit about how frequently you might want to think about having that so that it's not obtrusive, and whether we have topics or leave it open-ended. Perhaps we do it on a different day, or perhaps we commit once a quarter to having a webinar committed to that.
It can come off of this program and start its own program, like a roundtable discussion. We'll work on that.
I'll be in touch with all of you tomorrow. I'll send you a note. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you, Ava, and thank you, Bob and Jen.
Well, and thanks again to Ava. We should have started out that way. We forgot to do that today. Thank you, Ava, so much for sacrificing your time and for recording this and giving us a space on your website. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And thank everybody who was involved in this discussion. Really, really necessary and good information that was shared. And the experience of being able to speak with everybody and see how things have worked and what hasn't worked only enriches our lives. And Bob has 4 pages of notes, so you'll see your words in print.
Very helpful. I really get high-level material from the webinars, and this is just particularly the case here. Thank you so much. Anything else?